What's up, everybody? It's your good friend Eric. This is the Leading Edge Podcast, episode number 47. By the way, we're now well over 3,500 downloads, which is pretty darn exciting, if you ask me. This episode is all about my marathon story, which was a big goal that I had that I was able to get done. I was able to accomplish it, and I'm hoping that the things that I learned from this experience you can apply to whatever big goal that you have so you can get it done, so you can accomplish it. So this is not going to be about coronavirus. We've been talking about coronavirus the last couple of episodes, so this episode will not be about that. Before we dive into my story about my marathon, I'll tell you and I'll give you just a real-time check-in, all right? So real-time check-in on what's going on for me in my world. Man, I'm doing amazing. Despite the things that are going on externally, yes, these are challenging times in a lot of ways, and I'm thriving right now. Our business is thriving. We're adding some amazing people to our team. Our team is super engaged. They're in motion. They're focused. They're doing great work. They're staying connected to their clients, just spreading all kinds of goodwill all over the place, and that's incredible to watch. My family, they're also thriving here at home. Girls are doing amazing, playing together, doing creative things together, putting on shows for Julie and I, and plays and skits and all kinds of fun stuff. And Julie is doing incredible. So yeah, overall, life is really good, despite the challenges. And these are challenging times. Okay, so to my marathon. My marathon could absolutely be classified as a BHAG. Do you guys know what a BHAG is? Have you ever heard of that? It's an acronym. BHAG stands for Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. You may have heard about that term before. Jim Collins came up with that term in his book called Built to Last. I'm actually looking at it right now here on my desk as I'm recording this podcast. So this goal for me doing a marathon was a BHAG. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you the story. And then after I tell you this story, I'll tell you the story behind the story. And so kind of the story behind the story will end up being, I think, the bigger takeaways. But this will just start with the story. So like if you and I were having lunch together, or if you said to me, hey, Eric, I heard you ran a marathon. Tell me the story. This would be the story I would tell you. But then if we had a long time to talk, I'd tell you the story behind the story. But initially, this will just be the initial story. So I got a marathon done. It's been now 2 weeks ago that I ran this marathon, and I've always wanted to do this. Like I've always been intrigued at the concept of running a marathon. Like you've probably driven around and seen on the back of people's cars, the little white sticker that says 26.2. And when I see that, I'm like, oh, cool. There's someone who ran a marathon. I want to be someone who has ran a marathon. And so for me, a marathon was both a to-do goal and a to-be goal. And you've probably learned that there are different kinds of goals you can have. You can have to do, to be, to have, and to give. So for me, the marathon was more than just a to-do. It was more than just checking off the list. It was also a be. I wanted to be someone who could run a marathon, who has run a marathon. Never really imagined myself as turning into a consistent marathon runner, but I just wanted to do that, and simply because I wanted to do it, because I wanted to, not that I'm going to put that sticker on my car, but I wanted to be someone who could put that sticker on their car if they want. I wanted to understand what the experience is like. I wanted to go through the process. I wanted to know what it was like to, cross the finish line when the marathon was done. I wanted to just know what it was like to feel it in my body, and knowing too it was going to be hard. Wanted to be at that level of just being in shape. I wanted all of those things, and you know what I wanted mostly? Mostly what I wanted is to think at the end of my life, or toward the end of my life, I could reflect back, and that could be something that I was super proud of. That, yeah, you know what? I was someone who ran a marathon. I just wanted that. So, about my 50 by 50 list, 50 things I wanted to get done by the time I turned 50. This is an important component of the story, by the way. I turned 50 at the end of May, and I wanted to get that marathon done by the end of May. So I scheduled a marathon. Back a few months ago, I scheduled a marathon in early May. So the first weekend in May, I was scheduled to do a marathon here in Fort Collins. It's a well-known marathon called the Colorado Marathon. The other great thing about this marathon is that it's mostly downhill. And so I was really, really looking forward to that. Then coronavirus hits, and initially, when things were not as certain or maybe not as impactful as they are now, I was starting to question, gosh, is the marathon going to happen or not? I wonder. And then, of course, as time went on, I'm like, there's no way that this marathon's going to happen. And then, of course, as time went on, they canceled the marathon. So lo and behold, I was sitting there, and they had canceled the marathon. Of course, all marathons were canceled, and yet this goal was sitting there on my list, something I wanted to get done by the end of May. Well, there's no way I was going to be able to do an organized marathon by the end of May, given shelter in place and all of those things and all events being canceled. So I decided I was going to go run my own. Decided I was going to go run my own marathon. So that is what I did. I went out and I mapped out a course using my bike and the GPS on my bike. And you'll hear I turned it into some loops. So I didn't, run, just, it wasn't, I repeated some of the terrain, so to speak. But anyway, so I mapped it out, 26.2 miles on my bike using my GPS. So I knew exactly where I had to run and how far I had to run. I knew that it was going to be 26.2 miles. Julie joined me for part of it. She joined me for part of it. Actually, it turned out to be about half of it on her bike and also running. So she ran with me about the last 4 miles. And then before then, she was on her bike with me for a lot of it as well. And so I got it done. So guys, I got it done a couple weeks ago, and it felt amazing. Yeah, did I miss like the crowds maybe that would have been there, or running with a big group of people and having that shared experience and having people along the course, along the sidelines, cheering us along and going under some big banner that said finish and having people cheer and being handed a medal or whatever for participating and getting the t-shirt. And yeah, I missed all that stuff. I wish I could have had all that stuff, but man, I just didn't want to miss the chance to get this done by the end of May. So now, why don't I tell you the story behind the story? Okay, so here's the story behind the story. So now you know that I got it done. So what's interesting is that I knew I wanted to get it done by the end of May, obviously because of my birthday coming up, and I got it. I got this marathon on my calendar. I went to print out and researched online one of those marathon training schedules, where it shows you week by week what you want to do, when the long runs are, when the short runs are, when you want to do some cross training, when you want to do some core workouts. I did it, I printed that thing out, but I didn't really follow it. And what I'll tell you, and I'll tell you more about my training, what I'll tell you is that the way I trained for this, I don't recommend at all. Like, don't follow my training on how I did this, but I was still able to pull this off. Probably experienced more pain than I would have if I would have trained. So don't follow my training, all right? I don't recommend it. So I was not doing a good job at training, all right? I was running occasionally, maybe once or twice a week, getting some runs in. But as I would tell people who had run marathons before, and they would ask me, where are you in your training? What's been your longest run so far? And I would tell them, and they would kind of roll their eyes or chuckle at me and be like, dude, you're behind, man. You really gonna be able to pull this off? And even Julie was starting to really question things like, shouldn't you have run further by now? Doing 7 or 8 mile runs, which is a big deal for me, but still nowhere near what a marathon was going to be. But I had a big resistance to going all in with the training initially, I was really procrastinating it. And I think that this right now is going to be a takeaway for you if you have your own BHAG, your own big, hairy, audacious goal that you haven't really embarked on. And so here we go with that takeaway. I used to joke with people as I was starting my training. I would say, the problem with the marathon, the big problem with the marathon is that it's 26.2 miles. That's the problem with the marathon, meaning that not only do you have to run that to get it done, but you have to run a whole lot up to that point to get yourself ready. So that's a problem. And so the resistance I was having to going all in with the training, as I was really processing this in my mind, I was like, all right, what's in my way here? Why am I not training? I've trained for other big things before, and I've done bigger athletic things before. What's in the way? And so what was in the way was a fear, of course. So often it's fear, but what it was a fear of discomfort. As I really fully processed this, as I really fully thought about it, the thing that was in the way and the thing that I was afraid of, the thing that was holding me back, it was ultimately all it came down to is that I was just afraid of being uncomfortable, because I knew that the training was going to be uncomfortable. Like I knew that was going to really hurt. I knew it was going to hurt. Like I knew it was good for me and good for my body and good, good for getting in shape. But I also knew that, doing a long run, doing a 10, 12, 13, 18, whatever mile run as I was training, I knew that was going to be super uncomfortable. So there I was holding back. I wasn't choosing to go forward. I wasn't embarking. I wasn't making the progress. I wasn't making the steps. I wasn't making the commitment. I wasn't taking the action, only because I was afraid of being uncomfortable. And isn't that the thing when you ultimately boil it down for a lot of us? Isn't that the simple thing that we're afraid of? So I would bet you any big goal that you have that's maybe lived in your brain for a long time, that you've wanted to do for a long, long time, but you've really never gotten around to it. You've never really taken the actions you need to, never really taken the steps, really never made the progress. I would bet you, maybe not in every case, but I would bet you in just about every case, or most cases, that the thing that's in the way is simply you being afraid of the discomfort that you will experience as you start along that process. So uncomfortable because you've never done it before, uncomfortable because you're confused, uncomfortable because you're going to make some missteps along the way, uncomfortable because you're going to have to persevere, right, and blast through, and maybe go have some uncomfortable conversations, have some dialogues you've never had before, have to go talk to people you've never had to before, have to go learn new things. Like all those things can be uncomfortable only for our brain. Oftentimes, often my marathon thing, it was more physical discomfort, but for many of our big goals, it's just mental discomfort. So it's only like a fear of discomfort that's in our way. And so kind of the resolution that I was able to have, the conclusion that I drew was, you know what? I'm going to be uncomfortable, but I'm going to be okay. Like I'm not going to be hurt. I'm not going to die, right? I'm not going to perish because of this. I won't be like permanently injured. It's only going to be uncomfortable. And in the scheme of things, it will be uncomfortable for a really short amount of time. And I just got to the point where my willingness to live with that discomfort became bigger than the fear of the discomfort itself, right? So the thought and the vision of me crossing the finish line and being someone who could put the sticker on their car if they wanted to, I got to the point where all those things became bigger than the discomfort. So I was willing to live with the discomfort. So I knew it wasn't that I somehow concluded that it wasn't going to be discomfort, wasn't going to have discomfort, or wasn't going to be uncomfortable. I knew that was going to happen, but I was willing to live with that, knowing what the experience was going to be like on the other side. So do that process with the big, hairy, audacious goal that you have. Boil it down. See, ultimately, it's likely that the only thing in your way is a fear of the discomfort. And, process, in relatively speaking, how uncomfortable really is that going to be in the whole scheme of things? It's likely you've lived through discomfort way, way bigger than that. And it's so likely that the payoff will far outweigh that discomfort, right? So that's what it ultimately comes down to. Is the payoff going to easily surmount the discomfort that you're going to feel? So once I got to that point, then I was able to do some longer runs, get myself ready, at least do much, much better with my training. And I was willing to go all in, and I was willing to go embark on the adventure of getting the marathon done. The other thing that was a game changer for me, and really a big reason that I even chose to go ahead and do the marathon, by the way, in advance of when I had scheduled to do it originally. The organized event was going to be in early May, and I ended up doing the real marathon near the end of March. And so the reason why I was able to do it, and the reason why I knew I could finish, not only because I knew I could live with the discomfort, but because my big revelation when I started doing some longer training runs, what I figured out, the key was to slow down. So initially, part of the problem was I was doing these longer-ish runs at the same pace I would go out and run a couple miles, right? So I'll run, maybe once or twice a week. I'll go run around my neighborhood. It's about 2.5 miles, maybe sometimes 3 miles. Well, what was happening, I was trying to do these 7-8 mile runs at that pace, and I would come back destroyed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel terrible. There's no way I can run 26 miles at this pace. But I finally figured out one of the long runs was to just slow down. I just had to slow down. So I'll never forget, I did a long run of 10 miles at a slow pace, and I finished. I was like, I can do this. I figured this out. I was not destroyed at the end of those 10 miles. Was I tired? Yes, for sure. But I was like, you know what? I can do this. So I think so much of us getting to the finish line and accomplishing our goal, it so depends on the pace. So oftentimes we just got to slow down, right? Just slow down the pace, and that can help you get to the finish line. So often we're just so spun up and so going about fast, and get the whole to-do list done and go, and you miss it all, and you end up burning out. So just slow down. That will so help you get yourself to the finish line. A couple more takeaways. One is a reason I was able to get this done, and a big thing for me that helped me to accomplish this was I was able to break it down. All right. So what I did is I went out on my bike, mapped out the route, and I figured out that there was a loop near my house where I would pass my, start and end at my house that was just under 10 miles. And then the loop around my neighborhood was just under 3 miles. So what I figured out was, all right, I'm going to do this bigger loop twice. Again, that's, call it 9.5 miles. And then I'm going to do this loop around my neighborhood twice. That's a loop I'm used to. It's just under 3 miles. And then I have to go add on a little bit at the end, and that was going to be it, right? So I embarked on the day just having those broken down steps in my head. So step one was to get the big loop done. Step 2 was to get the second big loop done, right? And then I had 2 more small loops, and then I had the little bit at the end. So that was super helpful for my brain to tackle this. It was super helpful for my brain to get its arms around what I was about to do. If I started with, all right, I got to go run 26 miles right now, and it was just only one huge loop that I had mapped out on my bike, then that was going to be way harder than imagining this as just broken down little steps. So for you, for your BHAG, find the broken down little steps, find the milestones. What are the metaphorical loops that you can find in your brain? I got to do this first loop, then the second loop, right? And so break it down. That will make it way, way easier. Otherwise, it's overwhelming, right? So the fact that I had kept this to like broken down steps, that kept me from being overwhelmed at the whole process of running the marathon. And then the last thing I'll tell you, and what made a massive, massive, massive difference for me on that day, was I had help. So I had Julie with me. So she rode her bike with me on the second loop, the second big loop of 9-ish miles, and she carried my water. She even had kind of a change of clothes because it was getting much warmer as the day went on. So I was able to change up my clothes, and again had water, had my goose, right? And more than anything, I just had her there as like emotional support. Her there like cheering me on, like, hey, you're doing great, you can do this, looking awesome, way to go. Like I had her there by my side. And then what she did, she ran with me for the last 4 miles, and that was amazing. What she became was my pace setter then, because I was barely moving at that point, barely going faster than walking speed. But the fact that she was there with me as my pace setter, so I just like settled in. Right, I was running just a few paces behind her. She was there out front. I was just following her, and I just was kind of watching her and having her kind of metaphorically pull me along. And oh my gosh, I could not have done this by myself. So that would be the last takeaway I would give you, is that just know there's no way you're going to be able to do this all by yourself if you're doing your BHAG. So there you go. There's my marathon story. I got it done. It feels good. I'm not sure if I'm going to get that sticker or not, but in any case, I can feel proud of that. I can, be at the end of my life knowing that I'm someone that got the marathon done. Yes, I wish I could have experienced it with lots of other people and had the whole pomp and circumstance all around it, but it didn't, and but it still feels really, really good. So that's my marathon story. So thank you, as always, for listening to the podcast. Thanks for being engaged with this. If you want more coaching, stories, help, support, things like this, go check out my membership program called The Leading Edge, jointheleadingedge.com. In the meantime, enjoy life on the leading edge. We'll see you in the next podcast.